What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein. Alongside me, a man that would never, ever, ever quit on his teammates. Fresh with the new haircut, looking like Kristaps Porzingis in his prime, Benjamin McDonald, ladies and gentlemen. Ben, cutting your own hair in Pittsburgh. How's life treating you?
Even gave myself a little fade. I don't know if you can see, faded it up a little here into the back too.
This is where I wish this podcast had video, because I know I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, but yeah, the fade looks good, man.
Yeah, I would never quit on my team. That's my podcast host. Jason. If I had the little PO sunglasses, it'd be
it's just
perfect.
Not fair. It's just not fair. Listen, a lot going on in the world of the association right now, and I say that generously because we are in, I think, our 10th week without NBA basketball. We should be talking second round of the playoffs right now, and it's unfortunate. Ben and I were going to get into a will they or won't they play because there are moves being made this week. Conversations are being had. Players are being informally asked whether or not they want to play. I think it's going to come down to the players. I think the owners are all in agreement on like what's going on in baseball right now. But there's just so much happening with the players kind of getting the most say. Will they want to be sequestered from their families? Will they want to play on an offsite location like Orlando? Or does the allure of Las Vegas come in because people can bet on those games? It's just so much. So we're not going to get too much into it. But I did want to get your quick thoughts because, like, LeBron said, let's play. Obviously, his team's clinched a playoff spot already, and they're number one in the West. Shaq said, mail it in. Guy's retired. And other guys are saying if this season is played and there's a championship winner crowned, that it's going to be put with an asterisk. So I just want to get your quick thoughts because this is going nowhere fun.
Well, I'm gonna do what I normally do in these situations and follow the money, Jason. And the money says they will want to play more games because it means more money in their pocket. So I am going to follow the money and say they will find a way to do this. I also think that there is a serious push from a lot of owners to try and avoid the NFL schedule as much as possible. That could mean starting the next season around December, Christmas, maybe January even. I think that's something a lot of the more progressive owners have already considered. In fact, I don't even think it. I know it. There's been news articles reporting this for a while. That would mean that they could end the season as late as September. If the NFL gets pushed, which it could, I think some owners now are even willing. There's been some reports that they'd be willing to go a little bit into September because they're not confident that the NFL necessarily, is as big of a deal if they're at the finals where they can schedule games around that. So they don't have to schedule a game on a Sunday. They can have the finals play Saturday, Tuesday. And now there's no issue having to go up against the first week of NFL games. So I am going to follow the money and say that they end up playing games because that will put more money in the pocket of owners, more money in the pocket of arena workers, and of NBA players. So my guess is that they find a way to salvage some sort of the season. I don't think there'll be almost any regular season games. I do think there will be a postseason, and I do think they'll have a championship. And let's not forget that we're watching a documentary now that we'll get to in a second that preceded a strike where the season was shortened to about 50 games. Just a few years ago, we had another season that was shortened in terms of regular
LeBron's
season.
First championship was a lockout shortened season, so I guess it does make a little more sense. But before we get into the last dance, I just want to say that at least conversations are being had. They had a players-only call. I believe it was the other day. Can you imagine being on a call with 450 NBA players and having to talk to all those guys? That's very intense. And then news leaked out right before the show that a couple of the top players in the league all had a private call, and they're all in unison about getting some form of basketball going. I think LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis, Westbrook, Curry, Durant, Lillard. I'm forgetting the eighth guy. Maybe it was Harden. But it's good that these conversations are happening because without hearsay and speculation, there's really not too much going on in the basketball world. I mean, thankfully, this last dance is, coming in hot. There's 2 more parts left, but we are here to recap parts 7 and 8. And Ben, it appears you and I have switched places.
It does. I was saying this to you before the show, but it was really funny. Flo and I watched it on Sunday. Often we watch one Sunday, and I know this is heresy, but we watch one Sunday and we watch one Monday to really space it out. We watched both Sunday this time, and the one thing that drove us nuts was that we were going between like 1996 and 1998, especially because it was going for one playoff series. There was nothing else going on in the 98 season that they were talking about. They were just doing like the Nets series, which was a sweep, the Charlotte series, which I think they won in 5 games. I mean, it was not exactly the most riveting stuff that we were going back and forth for. Although I did enjoy all the stuff about B.J. Armstrong that they had in the one flashback, I guess, to Charlotte. But the whole like them going up and crushing these teams in the present was just not super interesting. And meanwhile, Jason, you had a bit of a change of heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because I went in expecting them to go back and forth. But when I think, and I said this on the show last week, like Space Jam was kind of like my welcome to the NBA, you like basketball moment. Because, I've been a Nets fan probably since I was like 10, but Space Jam came out in 96. You and I were 6 years old. I didn't have my dad growing up. It was just me and my mom. I really didn't have anyone being like, oh, let's watch this basketball. The Knicks are really good, because that was when the Knicks they were in the finals in 94. They had that legendary series in 93 with the Bulls that was on last week's portion of The Last Dance. And I didn't have that. So, like, watching Space Jam, that was like my entry into basketball. So I didn't mind it because I thought that him shooting Space Jam in the middle of a title defense, along with his baseball career, I thought those were two of the more interesting aspects of Jordan's career. There was so much to unpack there with Reinsdorf ended up being the guy that signed his paychecks because he also owned the Chicago White Sox, and just seeing him practice and like basically become a rookie again, and all the crowds in Birmingham to watch him play with the Barons. It was very compelling to see what went into his retirement. I mean, Ben, that press conference that was held after the news leaked out at the White Sox game, where there were like thousands of media members packed into one room, all because Jordan was retiring at 31 years old. That's the stuff that you and I were too young to remember. So to see that played back, very compelling stuff.
The other guy who I feel like, just like, man, so there's some people who are the clear villains. Jerry Krause, clear villain. I think we can all agree. No one's coming out of this thinking, oh man, I love that Jerry Krause guy. What a great guy. Jordan, obviously, this is like myth making for Jordan, and rightfully so. I mean, he's the GOAT for a reason. But the guy, Jason, who I feel like has not gotten enough pub for secretly kind of being also terrible, but coming out looking great out of all this is Jerry Reinsdorf. Like, all the stuff that Jerry Krause did was expressly signed off on by Reinsdorf. Like, at the end of the day, he's the owner. Like, let's be real. If he said, yeah, you know what, Jerry, we're bringing back Phil Jackson, we're bringing back Pip, and we're bringing back Jordan, Jerry Krause has to do that. That's who signs his checks. And yet, at no point, and I feel like no one has mentioned this yet, but like at no point does Jerry Reinsdorf say anything. And yet he's like, oh, it's kind of a shame. Yeah, there was a lot of drama going on. And it's like, you're the owner, dude. Like, you could have stopped all of this. What are you talking about? It's sort of like the most ridiculous part of this whole thing. Like, you can tell that Michael Jordan edited things, which is kind of hilarious because, like, you still see like him berating teammates and everything, and like clearly like they were like, yeah, let's not make him look too bad. He didn't want himself to look too bad. But I am shocked at how Jerry Reinsdorf has gotten just a complete pass out of the show when all of the stuff that Jerry Krause did was expressly signed off on by Jerry Reinsdorf, because otherwise he wouldn't have had a job at the end of this. He goes on to manage the Bulls up through 03. And spoiler alert, Jason, after The Last Dance ends, the Bulls do absolutely jack and are terrible, the worst team in the league, basically win the same number of games combined over the next 4 years as they did in the last year that Jordan was there. So I am amazed. I'm a little impressed, to be honest with you, at just how much Jerry Reinsdorf was able to just completely sidestep any criticism in here as we continue to see Jerry Krause get just run over by 18 wheels in every episode of the show.
See, I agree with you because I think, we're 8 parts in, and I think out of everyone featured, I think the Jerry Reinsdorf and Steve Kerr are getting the two best edits, right? Because, like, Pippen is not happy with the way that he's portrayed. Dennis Rodman is probably somewhere building a spaceship. And look, this is hard for Michael. He's reliving a lot of things from his past, like what happened to his father. This wasn't easy, but I give him all the respect in the world for actually going public with all of this all these years later. But I made a point when we first said we were going to recap The Last Dance, and I pegged the question. Look, Krause is pegged as the villain. Should Reinsdorf take any blame for not jumping in enough? And this is what I'll say. I'll play devil's advocate. When you think of owners who are meddlesome, you think George Steinbrenner, former New York Yankee owner, right? He ran the team from the owner's box, fired managers left and right, fired front office people left and right. But Jordan is the reason that the modern era of the NBA got on the map, right? He was the NBA was not what it is today back in the 90s. So if you're sitting in Reinsdorf's chair, you're thinking, wow, I won 6 titles in 8 years, revenues through the roof. I am very rich. I'm not going to sit here and tell my general manager how to run the organization. That's what I pay him to do. So I think that maybe that was Reinsdorf's thinking, because I agree. Like today, Mark Cuban would never let this fly, okay? Mickey Arison with the Heat would not let this fly, right?
Well,
the Buss family.
Let's also say this. There's another part of this that you kind of allude to there, but Scottie Pippen was on his meager contract that he was on. If they run the team back after this season, Michael Jordan is probably making in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million a year. He's not taking a pay cut. And now you're paying Pippen probably half of that. So back in those days, he was going to be paying like Warrior type money right now, but back in 99. I mean, he was going to be paying those two guys $60 million. I mean, Jordan had the largest contract in the league. I'll have to look up exactly how much Jordan made in 1997. But I'll tell you one thing. Those guys were not coming cheap as they were before. And he was still going to have to pay Kukoc and Rodman and Kerr and all those other guys. I'm looking here. Michael Jordan in 97, 98 was $33 million. So you're talking probably $35 million for him, probably another 15, 20 for Scottie if you keep those guys. I mean, it was not going to be cheap. You were going to pay those guys out the nose. And if you want to know what every Bulls and White Sox fan thinks about Jerry Reinsdorf, they think he's a cheapskate. And I think that this was the first move in a long line of cheap moves where he was happy to pay Jordan $33 million because he was paying Pippen nothing. He was paying Pippen like $2 million.
This is the thing, Ben. Reinsdorf told Scottie Pippen in 1991 not to sign that deal. He advised him against it.
Of course he
but
did.
Pippen
Yeah,
wanted that
sure.
security. No, he said that. No,
of course he said that. Get out of here with Jerry Reinsdorf going, oh, man, I don't know if I would take that contract, Scottie. Like, if anything, he said it then because he was thinking to himself, I don't know if I want to pay you this much. I'm hoping you get injured next year and don't have to pay you quite as much next year. But come on, Jason, you're better than that one. Like, Jerry Reinsdorf, even if he did say that, he wasn't saying it out of any sort of love in his heart for Scottie Pippen.
You know what? Coming out of this documentary, I'm feeling more and more terrible for Scottie. Just the way that he was portrayed, and then it comes out this past weekend of him quitting on the team in the final seconds in 94 when Kukoc hit the game winner in the playoffs, and, the backlash of that. It was a brand new team. Kerr just got there. Kukoc was a rookie. They just got Bill Wennington to play there. It was their first year without Michael. That wasn't pretty at all. I feel so bad for him. He's still 26 years later not living that down.
It's unbelievable. Do you think he'll ever live that down? Do you think people will ever forget that?
No, as much as The Last Dance is great for Michael, I think it's worse for Scottie. All he did his entire career was be Robin to the greatest Batman ever. And look, aside from Kobe and Shaq, a lot of these 1-2 punches since Michael and Scottie, they're not bona fide Hall of Famers. I mean, you could say the Heat teams, right? But you had 3. You had LeBron, Wade, and Chris Bosh. Scottie Pippen did everything. He was tenacious defensively, super athletic, running the floor, doing what it took to win. And then when Michael took that 18-month sabbatical,